So obviously they have some type of a deal between President Biden and obviously House Speaker McCarthy. We know that what is being offered on the surface is probably really crappy. So if you could just dig into the basics for people to understand, again, it's
never going to understand.
It looks like a boatload of austerity nonsense. So if you can please inform the audience as to what we're looking at.
I'm just curious how Steve even has, I don't even understand how what you believe works with the whole idea of debt ceiling anyway. Like I don't, this is where you turn into the voice from Charlie Brown. I'm sorry. Just please explain to the other people, because I don't understand how any of this shit works.
So in 1917, a law was put on the books that was supposed to help the president make payments during wartime. Okay. Right. And that thing has become the debt ceiling. It wasn't intended to be a stopper on spending. It was intended to, because at the time what was happening was every single possible bond had to be debated by Congress and then passed. So what they did was they let it, hey, we'll just let so many of them go before we have a talk about it, and then we'll go ahead and do it again. Well, it's changed, okay? And there are a bunch of laws, and, I've got several angles at this. One of them was the Ron Gray and Beowulf strategy of minting the coin. There's no law that says they can't do it. In fact, there's a law that says they can mint a coin of any denomination, deposit it, and voila, we have no more debt ceiling issue whatsoever. And this could be done instantly with executive order from the president, and we wouldn't have had any negotiation with McCarthy whatsoever. None, zero. But we know that's not Joe Biden's who he is. He is a Republican through and through, and he showed it. Yeah. The other thing is Bob Hockett, who wrote a great article in Forbes, talked about there are 7 laws, basically, aside from the 14th Amendment, that says point blank, the U.S. debt shall never be in question. U.S. will always pay its bills. The president has a 14th Amendment constitutional requirement to ensure all bills are paid, period. So It should supersede any of the debt limit games that are being leveraged. It completely not in the way the law was originally intended. But since 1917 and up through the Nixon era, there have been several other laws that were passed that eradicate and eliminate and make not even valid that law of 1917. Okay. So there's so much precedent. There's constitutional law. There's all kinds of stuff. There's solutions, gimmicky solutions that are not gimmicky, but from the minting the coin, et cetera. So Biden took the absolute most Republican way forward, and that is to pretend that the Republicans are dealing for real. And I spent the last several weeks subtweeting McCarthy because he would say the most ridiculous Lauren Boebert level stupid stuff possible. From our tax dollars, and why should we pay for your student debt when I paid for mine, and every single possible worthless libertarian Republican argument possible. It needed to be slaughtered. So the bottom line is the debt limit relitigates legal spending that was already passed into law by Congress, signed into law by the president, approved in the budget. And the answer to this also is that we can't spend any money anyway, regardless, if Congress didn't already authorize it. Congress already passed those laws, passed all those bills. That money is constitutionally supposed to be spent. Now let's go into the Richard Nixon era for a moment. And Richard Nixon, what he would do is he would sign bills into law, and then he would impound the money. He would literally put it in a lockbox and say, I ain't spending it. And so they said, that ain't faithfully executing the laws of the land. So they went ahead and I think it was in like 1974, created a law, the Anti-Impoundment Act or something like that, that literally took away Nixon's ability to stop making payments on bills he didn't really want to see happen. And then they also had the explicit eradication of the line item veto, on and on and on. So there is law upon law upon law upon constitutional law that makes this entire debt ceiling joke a joke. And it's one that has a lot of really bad things associated with it as far as it goes for regular people.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't Biden want to get rid of it? Because when the Democrats are not in power, they want to be able to hold the Republicans hostage with it as well. So that's
it's fundraising. It's fundraising.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why they never codified Roe. And it's so interesting that, and they're still trying to fundraise off of it. And so, which is why I will not allow that anymore. I'm just going to pay for that issue all on its own. I'm going to circumvent, but the Democrats are not helping us. They're not helping me get my lady rights in Florida. I could tell you that. They're not fighting for my lady parts.
Nope. So I started trying to, I actually went live on my own channel at noon today, trying to explain to people why I use the spicy, angry rhetoric that I do. And it's because most people do not associate economics with an AR-15. Most people focus on violence with the AR-15. They worry about guns. They worry about all this stuff, but they don't think about the fact that, and I'm looking, Jeff Stein of the Washington Post put a great tweet thread out, and I want to read it off to you real quick.
He is the best DC guy as far as if you're going to pick one guy that's in there that's really DC, Jeff Stein's the best one they got.
That's right. So let me just read to you what this debt ceiling deal says so far. And I want you to remember, while I'm reading this off, remember point blank that none of this had to be negotiated. Biden had every legal precedent. He could have gone to the Supreme Court, ended this debt ceiling lie forever. He did not do any of that. He did not mint the coin. He did nothing but bend a knee to a Republican and gave him life, spoke life into his, existence. Biden could have cuckolded him quickly, but he didn't. Why? Because Biden is a Republican. Anyone tells you differently is just simply not dealing with the reality. Let's just hear what Jeff Stein had to say about the deal.
Yeah.
He said, summary of the deal as I understand it, debt ceiling raised for 2 years. So we won't be having this fight for 2 years. Domestic programs frozen next year, up 1% in 2025. Inflation adjusted cut. Domestic programs frozen next year. Okay. Boost defense budget and the VA budget.
Okay, well, I'm with the VA budget, but okay.
Well, yeah, but you see how they put that in?
Yes,
anyway.
yes.
So then some tightening of work requirements on TANF and SNAP, energy permitting details. In other words, to allow more digging and whatever. And then claw back some of the new IRS money, whatever. I don't care much about that. But regardless, though, see, when I spend as the federal government, I don't spend on individuals. I spend in macro aggregates. I spend on big things. And that money makes it through the economy. So when that money isn't spent into the economy, whether you like what it was spent on or not, what ends up happening is you end up drying up. It's like a drought in the desert, and the sand starts cracking like you're at Joshua Tree, and it's just a real disaster, right? Anyway, so there's that. So 2 years of basic austerity baked into this agreement. Work requirement for food stamp moves from 50 to 54. So people up to 54 are going to have to work. Ridiculous. My understanding is the energy permitting changes are very minimal. Okay, that's good to know. He says there's a student loan provision as well. The agreement, as I understand it, codifies into law the administration's existing plan to end the forbearance. It's going to be over soon, folks. And the tsunami out of everything else.
That's going to be, oh yeah.
It's going to be biblical. And let me just stop here before we lose this point.
Yeah. The student thing is an issue.
It's very easy to focus on some rich kid getting student aid, whatever. But let's just be fair. I have never met a rich kid that had to go get a Pell Grant. I've never met a rich kid that had to get a student loan. I've never met, and in fact, a lot of bougie upper middle class people pay for their kids' school too. Okay. So there you go. So when you look though at the average person that takes out these big debts, you're not exactly beating up the rich here. You're beating up the poor. Okay. So anyway, when you look at this, most of these people that I'm worried about everyone, but the ones that really drive the nail in are the elderly that had lost their jobs during the great financial crisis in 2008, 2009, that couldn't find work in a business that they were experienced in, had to reinvent their careers, went back to school, took on debt, and now they've got like 5 or 6 years of real work life to make up. But they've got a degree now they got to pay for the next 20 years. So they're going to be 80 years old with a student debt payment and diminished Social Security. It's, you better hope they save like a champ. Most people don't. Most people didn't. Most people will not be able to. Anyway, so then it comes back and it says, no change in Biden's student debt cancellation program. So the student debt cancellation is going to be kept as is. Whatever was on the books is going to stay on the books.
Whatever pittance there was.
Right. Exactly. And it was a pittance too, believe me. And we're going to get into that here shortly. But anyway, he came back with a few other points, but most of this stuff, to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's just really important to understand that none of these things are about curtailing the wealth of the rich. It's 100% about tightening the screws and making life harder on regular people. Republicans, and I don't know whether this is theatrical at the top and they just do this stuff because this is what they're expected to do.
WWE.
Whether I don't know. Right. I'm being devil's advocate here for a minute. But you think about the fact that they're like telling everyone, if you're able-bodied, you lazy son bitch, get your ass out there and do some work, you son bitch. I mean, this is what the message is, right? And you got a Lauren Boebert out there with her painting on jeans and her AR-15 and her cheating spouse and everything else that she's got going on out there, wagging her finger, letting people know that they ain't getting over. They ain't going to get over no more. We're going to make sure you scumbag leeches are, and this is literally the rhetoric that they use. So when you have that, and you can see the Republicans are just straight up batshit crazy with their rhetoric. Okay. The things they're saying, I'm not so much worried about the politicians, although I am. I'm worried about regular people taking these talking points to the
they are. Well, they are.
I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, I remember in Pennsylvania, I think I've talked about this before, but where Doug Mastriano went on TV and basically said it was war on the woke people. Let's get these woke people out of our state kind of thing, right?
Mastriano,
I just was like,
he's
wow. Oh, he's the worst, man. But this is rhetoric that may not have any legislative bite to it, but it becomes the way each other treats one another. So it may as well be the law of the land, right? And so all of these things come together and you look and you're like, Democrats, you're up. What are you going to do? And there's Joe Biden saying, well, gosh, I guess we do need to cut back. Inflation's kind of high. We do need to reduce the deficit. And you're like, what in the hell are you saying? And then worse, and it goes deeper because Vote Blue sycophants echo and parrot and like people are out there already.
Didn't Joe do an amazing job, Steve?
Oh, I know, right? Oh, he's playing 3D chess, right? This guy is strategery embodied in a old corpse, right? So I just look at this and I say to myself, what the actual F is going on? And the reason why
it's resistance. It's not even real.
It's not even real. And the idea though, and the idea that Democrats are so disconnected from the pain and suffering of Jane and Joe Sixpack, both Republican Jane and Joe Sixpack, and everyone, the working class, right? These folks are so tone deaf. The only thing they care about is their 401ks and their stock portfolios and all the other shit that rich people and well-to-do people and people. I was watching my old Facebook timeline. I saw an old friend of mine. He's a sales director at Verizon. And if you know anything about sales directors and salespeople, they've always got the Biff smile, like, you got all the catchy smile, and they're all hanging out with a bunch of friends, always hugging, always like the world is their oyster, double flip collars, the eyes-odd shirt, the pink and the baby blue flipped up. All you get the point, right? And they're all smiling like there's nothing in the world that could ever hurt them. And I'm just looking at that, and I'm thinking to myself, holy fuck, when my 120,000 in student debt hits, how am I going to deal with that new $700, $800 a month payment? How am I going to deal with that? What am I going to deny my children? What am I going to do here? Right? Because I took on that student debt myself with the idea that there would be an economy that would produce for a guy with 2 master's degrees, et cetera. I thought that a guy with all the certifications I have, that we would have an economy for that, but we don't. And so there you are as a person that's super educated, a resume that could choke a donkey, that's competing with young kids coming out of college now, and they can pay them pennies on the dollar, and they do. So you got to understand the real world out there. And when you cut spending, when you put these kinds of austerity programs in place, it's not just a gentleman's disagreement at the top. It's not just a technocratic thing. It has real life consequences on real people, and people at the margins who already don't have. It's going to be biblical. It's going to be really bad.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.